Rose spread Master Chen's documents across her private study, memorizing every detail. The shadow market's layout, its protocols, its unwritten rules. One mistake could cost her everything. The ornate key sat beside her, its surface catching the lamplight as if alive. She'd spent the morning selecting her attire carefully, expensive enough to command respect, but not so ostentatious as to draw unnecessary attention. The fabric was specially chosen to conceal both weapons and the crystal she'd retrieved from its hiding place. After 5 years, its warmth against her skin still felt like both comfort and warning. A message had arrived from Master Chen that morning containing only 3 words. She arrives early. His sister was already making her moves. Rose would need to be perfectly prepared, perfectly poised. Everything she'd learned in Concordia, every lesson in manipulation, every skill in reading people, would be tested. Rose checked her reflection in the mirror, ensuring every detail was perfect. The elegant but practical attire would allow her to move freely if needed, while still marking her as someone of significance. 5 years of playing power games in Concordia had taught her the importance of first impressions. She went through Master Chen's notes one final time before feeding them to the flames, watching as every secret about the shadow market turned to ash. The key seemed to pulse faintly as she tucked it into a hidden pocket, as if responding to her preparations. A knock at her door made her pause. But it wasn't a messenger with another warning from Master Chen, just a servant delivering the final piece of her ensemble, a deceptively simple necklace that could deflect certain types of magic. The dark moon was approaching. Soon she would need to make her way to the market's entry point. Everything she'd learned, everything she'd become since falling through that portal from Eldermire, had led to this moment. Night fell over Concordia, like a velvet shroud. Rose made her way through the quieting streets, every sense alert. The route to the market's entry point took her past the enforcers' quarters, past where Silas would be preparing for his own journey to Earth. She pushed away the pang of regret at missing his departure. The entry point was hidden in plain sight, a seemingly abandoned courtyard in the old quarter. As she approached, she could feel the air growing thicker, heavy with magical potential. Other figures moved through the shadows around her, all heading to the same destination, all carefully avoiding direct acknowledgement of each other. Rose found her position, marked by subtle signs only those with keys would recognize. The dark moon was rising, invisible in the sky but felt in the very air around them. She withdrew the key, feeling its power responding to the moment. All around the courtyard, others were doing the same. The shadow market was about to open. The key grew warm in Rose's hand as the dark moon reached its peak. Around the courtyard, reality itself seemed to ripple like disturbed water. The air crackled with ancient magic as the barriers between realms thinned. Rose held the key before her as Master Chen had instructed. Its surface began to glow with an inner light, responding to the magical surge. All around her, other keys lit up like stars in the darkness, creating a constellation of power points around the courtyard. The very fabric of space seemed to fold inward, revealing a passageway that hadn't existed moments before. Through it, Rose could see lights and movement. The shadow market, awakening. The other key holders began moving forward, each maintaining careful distance from the others. Rose took a deep breath, centering herself. She was no longer the frightened girl who had fled Eldermire, nor even just Master Chen's student. She was someone who had built her own power, who understood the delicate dance of influence and control. With measured steps, she joined the procession into the market. The shadow market unfolded before her like a fevered dream. Stalls and pavilions stretched into impossible distances, their arrangements defying normal geometry. Light came from everywhere and nowhere, casting strange shadows that moved independently of their sources. Merchants from a dozen realms displayed their wares, artifacts that pulsed with power, scrolls that whispered their own contents, creatures that shouldn't exist, bound in cages of pure energy. The air was thick with the scent of exotic incense and crackling magic. Rose moved through the crowd with practiced grace, her senses alert for any sign of Master Chen's sister. The market's patrons were as diverse as its merchandise, beings of pure shadow haggling with ethereal creatures of light, demon lords examining delicate fairy crafts, things that hurt the eyes to look at directly conducting business through veiled servants. She noted the subtle hierarchies at play, who bowed to whom, which merchants received the most deference, how the market's own guards moved through the throng with quiet authority. Every detail could matter for what was to come. The rare items section lay at the market's heart, where the most valuable and dangerous merchandise was displayed. Rose made her way there gradually, pausing occasionally to examine other wares, building her cover as a legitimate buyer representing Master Chen's interests. She overheard fragments of conversation in languages both known and impossible, caught glimpses of transactions involving payment in memories or years of life rather than gold. A merchant offered her a mirror that showed possible futures, while another tried to interest her in bottled starlight. Then she saw it, the crystal Master Chen had described, floating in a containment field of pure energy. Even from a distance, she could feel its power calling to the crystal hidden beneath her clothes. The resonance between them was almost painful. But more importantly, she noticed the elegant woman watching the crystal from across the way, her pose too casual to be genuine. Everything about her spoke of careful calculation, from her perfectly arranged robes to the way other market-goers subtly avoided her space. Master Chen's sister had arrived early indeed. As Rose drew closer to the display, she caught sight of the seller, and her blood ran cold. Though years had passed, she recognized the distinctive markings of one of Draven's inner circle. The servant's face bore old burn scars, a badge of loyalty to their disfigured master. The crystal's origin was suddenly painfully clear. This wasn't just any portal artifact. This was from Murk Dusk itself, possibly even from Eldermire's ruins. Its presence here was no coincidence, and neither was Master Chen's sister's interest in it. Rose kept her face carefully neutral as she observed both threats, the calculating grace of Chen's sister and the watchful presence of Draven's servant. One wrong move would alert either of them, and she couldn't afford to be recognized by someone who might connect her to Eldermire's destruction. The game had just become far more complicated than even Master Chen knew. Rose moved through the crowd with practiced casualness, appearing to browse nearby items while analyzing the situation. The servant wouldn't recognize her. She had changed too much in 5 years. But one mention of her presence back to Draven could unravel everything she'd built. Master Chen's sister had positioned herself perfectly, able to observe both the crystal and any potential buyers. Her robes, while elegant, were cut to allow for quick movement. Rose noticed the subtle bulges that suggested hidden weapons. The Murk Dusk crystal pulsed with unfamiliar energy, different from her own Flameheart crystal's fire-attuned power. She could feel both artifacts reacting to each other's presence, fire and portal magic creating an uncomfortable resonance. She paused at a nearby stall, pretending to examine rare scrolls while listening to the servant's sales pitch to another potential buyer. From the heart of Murk Dusk itself, the servant was saying, recovered at great cost from the ruins of Eldermire, its power over portals is unmatched. The Flameheart crystal burned against Rose's skin, its fire magic reacting to the proximity of the portal crystal's power. The two artifacts' energies clashed subtly, like discordant notes in a melody. She would need to be careful. Any visible reaction could draw unwanted attention. The price naturally reflects its unique properties, Draven's servant continued to the potential buyer. Portal magic of this caliber is exceedingly rare. Rose watched Master Chen's sister drift closer, her movements casual but purposeful. The woman's eyes missed nothing, cataloguing each potential rival for the crystal. Rose knew she would need to time her own approach perfectly. Too soon would draw suspicion. Too late might lose the artifact entirely. The Flameheart crystal pulsed again, stronger this time, and Rose felt its heat intensify. She hadn't expected this level of reaction between the two artifacts. It added another layer of complexity to an already dangerous situation. Rose circled the display carefully, maintaining her cover as just another interested browser. She noticed how other potential buyers approached the portal crystal, only to drift away after quiet words from Draven's servant. The price was clearly being reserved for serious offers only. Master Chen's sister had moved closer to the display, her presence causing others to step back subtly. The woman's power was evident in how she commanded space without saying a word. The servant's posture stiffened slightly. Clearly they recognized a genuine potential buyer. The Flameheart crystal's heat was becoming harder to ignore. Rose hadn't felt it react this strongly since Eldermire. Whatever power the portal crystal contained, it was significant enough to agitate her own artifact's magic. She would need to make her move soon. Master Chen's sister was clearly preparing to open negotiations, and Rose couldn't afford to let that happen. But with both the sister and Draven's servant to contend with, her approach would need to be perfect. With deliberate grace, Rose moved toward the display. She kept her steps measured, projecting the quiet confidence Master Chen had taught her. The servant's eyes flickered to her briefly, then returned to Master Chen's sister, clearly considering the elegant woman the more serious prospect. Perfect. Being underestimated could work to her advantage. "An interesting piece," Rose said, her voice carrying just enough authority to demand attention. She drew Master Chen's merchant token from her sleeve, letting it catch the light. The servant's eyes widened slightly in recognition. Master Chen's sister turned, her calculated smile faltering for just a moment as she registered the token's significance. Rose could see her reassessing the situation, trying to determine if her brother had truly sent a representative or if this was some elaborate deception. The Flameheart crystal pulsed against Rose's skin, and she felt the portal crystal respond, their magics creating a subtle resonance that made the air feel thick with potential. "Master Chen sends his regards," Rose said smoothly, inclining her head to the servant, "and his interest in this particular item." The servant's expression shifted subtly, a mix of calculation and concern. Master Chen's name carried significant weight, but Draven's orders likely took precedence. "My current discussion was with the lady," the servant said carefully, gesturing to Master Chen's sister. "Was it?" Rose examined the portal crystal with practiced indifference. "How fascinating. I wasn't aware the lady had authority to speak for her family's interests." She let the pointed comment hang in the air. The sister's smile turned sharp. "You seem well informed for a mere representative." "Master Chen chooses his agents carefully." Rose met the woman's gaze steadily. The Flameheart crystal burned against her skin, its heat matching the tension in the air. "Indeed he does," Master Chen's sister said, moving closer. Her smile never wavered, though her eyes had turned cold. "Though I find it curious he would send someone so young for such an important transaction." "Age rarely reflects capability," Rose replied smoothly, "as your own rise to power demonstrated." The sister's eyes narrowed slightly at the reference to her bloody path to control. The servant watched their exchange with growing unease, clearly recognizing the undertones of threat beneath the polite words. "The crystal," Rose continued, turning back to the display, "is quite remarkable. Though I wonder about its provenance. Eldermire's ruins are notoriously dangerous. One might question how it was acquired." The servant shifted uncomfortably. They all knew dealing in questionable artifacts was common in the shadow market, but naming it so directly violated the careful dance of plausible deniability. "Some risks," the sister said softly, "are worth taking. Wouldn't you agree?" "Risks, yes," Rose said, allowing a faint smile to cross her lips. "Though wise merchants ensure their risks are calculated." She gestured at the crystal. "For instance, ensuring an artifact's true nature before attempting to harness its power. The sister's eyes glittered dangerously. You speak as if you have special knowledge of such matters. Master Chen's interests are diverse. Rose kept her tone neutral even as the flame heart crystal pulsed warningly against her skin. As are his concerns about who might seek to acquire such power. The servant cleared their throat. Perhaps we should discuss the actual terms of sale. In a moment, the sister cut in smoothly, her attention fixed on Rose. First, I'm curious why my dear brother would take such interest in this particular item. Unless, her smile turned predatory, he didn't send you at all. The air between them crackled with tension. The flameheart crystal's heat intensified, matching the danger of the moment. Your brother's interests are his own, Rose replied carefully, though I suspect they align with ensuring this artifact doesn't fall into unstable hands. Unstable? The sister's laugh held no warmth. Like those who destroyed Eldermire in the first place? A fire mage, wasn't it? Her eyes searched Rose's face. The stories are quite fascinating. Rose felt her pulse quicken but kept her expression neutral. The sister was fishing, probing for reactions. The servant had grown very still, listening intently. Ancient history, Rose said dismissively. We're here to discuss the present, and the present value of this particular item. Are we? The sister moved closer, her voice dropping. Or are we here to discuss how my brother has spent years preparing someone to stand against me? Teaching them the art of manipulation, perhaps? The flameheart crystal's heat was becoming difficult to ignore. One wrong move now could unravel everything. If that were true, Rose said, maintaining her composure, it would be a rather elaborate plan. Years of preparation just to interfere with a simple transaction. Nothing about this transaction is simple. The sister's eyes narrowed. Just as nothing about you is quite what it seems. I wonder. She reached out as if to examine Rose's sleeve. Rose stepped back smoothly, using the movement to create space while appearing casual. The market has rules about uninvited contact. The market has many rules, the sister agreed, her smile growing colder, including ones about misrepresenting oneself. Shall we test whether you truly speak for my brother? The servant shifted nervously, clearly sensing the growing tension. Other market-goers had begun to drift away from their area, recognizing the signs of impending conflict. The flameheart crystal pulsed again, stronger this time, and Rose noticed the portal crystal responding with its own surge of energy. A test isn't necessary, Rose replied, drawing Master Chen's token once more. Unless you're questioning your brother's seal. Oh, the seal is genuine, the sister's smile turned vicious. But seals can be acquired, just like crystals. Her gaze flicked meaningfully to Rose's robes, near where the flameheart crystal lay hidden. Rose felt her blood run cold. The sister knew, or at least suspected, about her hidden artifact. The servant was watching the exchange with growing interest, likely recognizing the implications. I find it interesting, the sister continued, her voice carrying just far enough to draw attention from nearby merchants. How certain magical signatures seem to resonate with each other. Fire and portals, for instance. The flameheart crystal burned hot against Rose's skin, as if responding to the threat. The portal crystal's glow intensified in its containment field, the two artifacts' energies creating a dangerous harmony. If you have accusations to make, Rose said carefully, perhaps we should take this discussion somewhere more private. Oh, I think here is perfect. The sister's voice carried just enough to ensure others were listening. After all, the market thrives on information, like the whereabouts of certain fugitives from Eldermire. The servant straightened at this, their attention suddenly much sharper. Rose could see the pieces coming together in their mind, connecting her to the destruction they'd witnessed. The flameheart crystal's heat was becoming almost unbearable, matching the danger of the moment. The portal crystal pulsed in response, their combined energies making the air thick with potential. "Think carefully about your next move," Rose warned quietly. "Some secrets are best left buried." "Like the secrets of how Eldermire fell?" The sister's smile was triumphant. "Or perhaps, who caused its destruction?" The crowd around them had grown still, sensing the building tension. Market guards had begun moving closer, their hands on weapons, ready to intervene if the market's rules of non-violence were broken. "You speak of Eldermire," Rose said, keeping her voice steady despite the Flameheart crystal's increasing heat. "But do you know what really happened there? How portal magic gone wrong tore reality apart?" The sister's smile faltered slightly. "Are you threatening me?" "Not at all. Simply suggesting that some powers are best left unpurchased." Rose turned to the servant. "Your master should remember that lesson well." The servant's scarred face paled at the implication. They knew exactly what had happened when Draven had tried to seize control of portal magic. The sister's eyes blazed with fury at losing control of the situation. "Guards!" she called out. "This woman is not who she claims." But before she could finish, the portal crystal's containment field suddenly flared with brilliant light. The portal crystal's energy surged outward, its power connecting with the Flameheart crystal in a way Rose hadn't expected. The magical resonance between them built rapidly, creating a high-pitched whine that made everyone nearby cover their ears. "What have you done?" the sister demanded, backing away as the containment field began to crack. "This isn't me," Rose said. Though the Flameheart crystal was now burning so hot she could barely stand it, the two artifacts seemed to be feeding off each other, their combined power growing unstable. The servant moved to secure the portal crystal, but its energy lashed out, forcing them back. Market guards were evacuating nearby stalls as the magical disturbance grew stronger. "Stop this!" the sister commanded, but Rose could see fear breaking through her composed facade. "You wanted to know about Eldermire?" Rose managed through gritted teeth. "You're about to get a demonstration." The containment field shattered completely, sending shards of magical energy flying in all directions. Rose instinctively threw up a barrier of fire, protecting herself and those nearest her from the debris. The portal crystal rose into the air, its power unconstrained, beginning to tear small rifts in reality around it. The Flameheart crystal responded with equal force, its heat now radiating through Rose's clothes visibly. "The market's barriers!" someone shouted. The magical boundaries that kept the shadow market separate from other realms were starting to waver under the strain. Master Chen's sister had drawn back, her calculated composure replaced by genuine alarm. The servant was shouting something about Draven's warnings, about the crystal's unstable nature. Rose knew she had moments to act before the situation spiraled completely out of control. The two crystals' power was building toward something catastrophic. She could feel it in the way reality itself seemed to be bending around them. The very air crackled with wild magic as the two crystals' powers clashed and combined. Rose could feel the Flameheart crystal responding to her own rising panic, its heat becoming almost unbearable. "Everyone back," she commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. Years of building authority in Concordia lent weight to her words, and even the market guards heeded her warning. The portal crystal was creating tears in space itself now, small windows into other realms appearing and disappearing rapidly. Through one, Rose caught a glimpse of Eldermire's ruins. Through another, the burning remains of the Order's fortress. Master Chen's sister was retreating, her ambitions forgotten in the face of raw, uncontrolled power. The servant had already fled, likely to report to Draven about this disaster. Rose stood her ground, though every instinct screamed at her to run. The Flameheart crystals seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat, and she could feel the portal crystal's energy reaching for her, trying to connect with her own artifact's power. The market was dissolving into chaos around her. Merchants fled with their valuable goods as reality continued to fracture. Each rift showed a different realm, different moments in time, some possibly even from her own past. Rose knew she had to act. Drawing on everything she'd learned about control since Eldermire, she reached out with her power, trying to establish some connection with the wild energies before her. The Flameheart crystal responded to her will, its familiar heat becoming more focused, more controlled. But the portal crystal fought against any attempt at containment, its power growing more erratic with each passing moment. "You can't control it!" Master Chen's sister called from a safer distance. That crystal was meant to be used with others of its kind. Alone. It's unstable. Rose barely heard her over the roar of magic, but those words struck home. The portal crystal wasn't fighting her. It was seeking balance, trying to connect with its missing counterparts. Through the rifts in reality, more glimpses of Eldermire appeared, not just its ruins, but moments from its fall. Rose saw fragments of that final battle, the portal magic gone wild, Draven's spell backfiring. The crystals were somehow accessing memories of their own past. There were 3, Rose realized suddenly, remembering something she'd seen in the portal master's chamber. 3 crystals that worked in harmony to control Eldermire's portals. The Flameheart crystal pulsed against her skin, as if confirming her understanding. The portal crystal's erratic energy seemed to respond to her realization, its power seeking that lost connection. But trying to contain this much wild magic alone would be nearly impossible. One wrong move, and she could tear open permanent rifts between realms, or worse, trigger another catastrophe like Eldermire. The market's own magical barriers were starting to fail completely. She had seconds to make a decision that could affect multiple realms. The crystal's combined power was reaching a critical point. Rose could feel it building towards something catastrophic, something that would make Eldermire's fall look minor in comparison. She had spent 5 years learning control, learning to harness power rather than just unleash it. But this was beyond anything she'd trained for. The portal crystal's wild energy was pulling at the very fabric of reality, while the Flameheart crystal burned with an intensity that threatened to overwhelm her. Through one of the rifts, she caught a glimpse of something that made her blood run cold. Draven's ruined face, watching through the tear in reality, his remaining eye widening in recognition. The sister was shouting something about containment protocols, but Rose knew conventional magical barriers wouldn't hold against this level of power. She needed to make a choice, try to contain both crystals and risk destroying everything, or... In that moment of crisis, Rose made her choice. With careful, deliberate movements, she reached for both crystals' power, not trying to control it, but to guide it. "You want balance?" she whispered to the portal crystal. "Then let's find it." The Flameheart crystal's heat surged through her as she channeled its power, not to fight the portal crystal's energy, but to work with it. Fire and portal magic intertwined, creating a controlled resonance rather than chaotic destruction. The rifts in reality began to stabilize, no longer tearing randomly at the market's barriers, but forming a more controlled pattern. Rose could feel the immense strain of directing this much power, but she held firm, remembering everything she'd learned about control since Eldermire. Through the stabilizing rifts, she saw Draven's face again, his expression changing from recognition to something else, rage perhaps, or fear. The sister had fallen silent, watching with calculated interest as Rose attempted the impossible. The 2 crystals' energies spiraled together, fire and portal magic weaving into something new and terrifying. Rose could feel both artifacts responding to each other, their power building towards something she couldn't control. "No," she heard Master Chen's sister shout, "the temporal resonance..." But it was too late. The combined power of both crystals erupted in a blinding flash. Rose felt herself being pulled into the maelstrom of magic, reality bending and twisting around her. The last thing she saw was Draven's face through one of the rifts, his expression changing from rage to shock as she was torn from that moment in time. She fell through what felt like an endless void before landing hard enough to drive the breath from her lungs. Rose lay there for a moment, trying to orient herself. The market was gone. The crystals had somehow fused into a single artifact that pulsed warmly against her skin. But something felt wrong, different. As her vision cleared, she realized she was still in Concordia, but not the Concordia she knew. Everything looked strange, more advanced. Changes she couldn't begin to understand had taken place. "I need to find Master Chen," she muttered, pushing herself to her feet. She still had a debt to pay, even if something impossible had just happened. The architecture had changed. Shops she knew were gone, replaced by buildings she didn't recognize. The very air felt different, charged with unfamiliar types of magic. People passed by wearing styles she'd never seen, using devices she didn't understand. Even the trading halls looked altered, modernized in ways that made her chest tight with uncertainty. "I need to find Master Chen," she said to herself, clinging to that one clear purpose. Something impossible had happened, but she still had a debt to pay. After questioning carefully, trying not to reveal her own confusion about the changes around her, Rose finally found Master Chen's residence. The building was familiar yet different, like everything else in this altered Concordia. The servant who answered her knock was young, eyeing her suspiciously. "Master Chen sees no visitors." "Tell him." Rose hesitated, then produced the token he'd given her what felt like only days ago to her. "Tell him his student has returned to pay her debt." The wait seemed endless. When the servant finally returned, his suspicion had been replaced by something like awe. "Follow me." The room they led her to was dimly lit, heavy with the scent of medicinal herbs. There, in a bed that seemed too large for his frail form, lay Master Chen. His hair had gone white, his once sharp features now gaunt with age, but his eyes, they still held that keen intelligence as they fixed on her. "Rose," he whispered, his voice weak but clear, "you haven't aged a day." "Master," Rose moved to his bedside, the reality of how much time must have passed hitting her like a physical blow. I failed you. The mission." He raised one trembling hand to stop her. The shadow market incident, the temporal anomaly. His eyes studied her face. "For you, it was just moments ago, wasn't it?" "Your sister," Rose started, but he shook his head slowly. "Long gone now, as is her ambition." A faint smile touched his lips. The portal, Crystal's disappearance, rather disrupted her plans. Rose felt the combined crystal's warmth against her skin. "Master, I still owe you a debt." "After all these years, still honourable." His laugh turned into a weak cough. "My sister died waiting for me to make a move against her. She never knew I'd already won. The day I chose to teach you instead of fight her." "But the debt," Rose insisted, struggling to process how much had changed while she'd been torn through time. "Is paid," Master Chen said softly. "Your disappearance created quite the stir in the shadow market. My sister's power was built on fear and intimidation. When word spread that her attempt to acquire the crystal had resulted in such chaos." His smile grew knowing. "Well, let's say her reputation never quite recovered." He reached for her hand with trembling fingers. "You achieved exactly what I needed, though not in any way I could have predicted." "You knew something like this might happen?" Rose asked, remembering his careful lessons, his precise preparation. "I knew the crystals were unstable. I knew you had your own crystal. I knew my sister needed to be stopped." His eyes gleamed with familiar intelligence. "But this outcome? Even I couldn't have planned this." "There's something else you should know," Master Chen said, his voice growing weaker. "Your friend, the Minotaur. He left for Earth the day you disappeared." Rose felt her chest tighten. Silas. He built something remarkable there. A sanctuary, much like Concordia, but different. A small smile touched his lips. He never stopped hoping you'd find your way there someday. Rose thought of their last dinner together, of promises made. You've kept track of him? I keep track of everything, my dear student, even now. He gestured weakly toward a detailed ledger on his bedside table. My last gift to you. Everything I've learned, everyone I've watched over the years, including how much has changed since you left. His breathing had grown more labored, each word seemingly requiring more effort. Master, Rose said carefully, the question she'd been afraid to ask finally finding voice. How long? How much time has passed since the shadow market? Master Chen's aged eyes studied her face. 70 years, my dear student. 70 years of changes you'll need to understand. He gestured again to the ledger. That's why I've kept such detailed records. I always knew you'd return, though I feared I wouldn't live to see it. Rose felt the room spin slightly. 70 years. Silas had been on Earth all this time. The Concordia she knew was gone, replaced by this modern version she barely recognized. The world has changed, Master Chen continued softly. New powers have risen, old ones have fallen. But some things remain constant. He reached for her hand again. The need for those who understand the true nature of power and information. 70 years, Rose repeated softly, her mind reeling. The changes in Concordia suddenly made terrible sense. The strange fashions, the unfamiliar magic, the modernized trading halls. For everyone else, it's been a lifetime, Master Chen said gently. For you? Hours, she finished. It feels like hours since I stood in the shadow market. She looked down at her clothes, still bearing the subtle scorch marks from the crystal's fusion. Since I had dinner with Silas. Master Chen's expression softened. He succeeded, you know. The Shadow Realm bar became exactly what he envisioned, a true neutral ground on Earth. Though I suspect it's never felt quite complete to him. Rose felt the weight of missed decades pressing down on her. Where do I even begin to understand all I've missed? Start with the ledger, he said, his voice growing weaker. I've documented everything you'll need to know. The new powers, the old debts, the changes in how information flows. He paused, catching his breath. Consider it my final lesson. Final lesson? Rose felt a different kind of dread now, watching her master struggle for breath. You mean? Even I can't manipulate time, my dear student. His smile was gentle but tired. I've held on, hoping you would return, hoping to give you this last gift of knowledge. He gestured again to the ledger. Everything you need to navigate this new era is there. Rose reached for the leather-bound book, feeling its weight, not just physical, but the weight of 70 years of carefully gathered information. Master, I'm not ready to... You are, he interrupted softly. You were ready the moment you chose to guide those crystals' power rather than fight it. The moment you understood that true control comes from adaptation, not force. The combined crystal pulsed warmly against her skin, as if agreeing with his words. Rose, Master Chen's voice had grown so faint she had to lean closer to hear him. One last thing. She took his fragile hand in hers, feeling how cold his skin had become. I'm here, Master. Remember, power isn't in knowing secrets. His eyes, still sharp despite his failing body, locked with hers. It's in knowing when to keep them and when to let them go. His grip tightened briefly, surprising strength in those aged fingers. You were more than just a student. You were the daughter I never had, the legacy I chose. Rose felt his hand go slack in hers. His eyes remained open, but the keen intelligence that had always burned there faded, like a candle finally exhausted of its wick. Master Chen, the man who had taught her to truly understand power, was gone. Rose sat motionless, still holding her master's lifeless hand. All the years he had waited, holding on to life just to see her one last time, to ensure she wouldn't be lost in this changed world. Carefully, gently, she reached out and closed his eyes. Her own remained dry. He hadn't taught her to mourn with tears, but with purpose. "Thank you," she whispered, finally releasing his hand. "For everything." The ledger seemed to grow heavier in her lap. 70 years of knowledge, his final gift to her. The combined crystal pulsed warmly against her skin, as if acknowledging the passing of the man who had understood its potential. She stood slowly, gathering both her composure and her resolve. Master Chen had prepared her for this moment, even if neither of them had known exactly how it would come. She was alone now in a Concordia she barely recognized, armed with his teachings and his final gift of knowledge.